microphone is already on, please stay at the podium so that those joining virtually can hear you. For those here in person, please press the button on the microphone in front of you. When the green light is on, your mic is live. Please make sure you speak clearly, directly into the microphone, again, so those joining us virtually can hear you. This will also help for recording purposes. As for process, please note that there will be an opportunity for board member discussion after each agenda item, starting with the recent events. There will be an opportunity for public comment after the financial updates towards the end of the meeting. If you wish to make a statement, please let us know. You can raise your hand or speak into your microphone. For virtual public comment, use the Q&A or raise hand feature on Zoom, and the moderator will unmute you. Now I will call roll. When called, please take a second to introduce yourself as the individual or the designee. We also have some new board members joining us, so if you would, please take a second to tell us about yourselves. We'll start with our 3 new board members. Governor's appointee representing the utilities industry.
Thank you, Derek. I'm David Briggs. I am with East Bay Mud. Very thankful for the appointment. Looking forward to making contributions and learning everything. Very briefly, I've been in the utility business for 30 years. 10 of it was in San Francisco. The last 10 have been with East Bay Mud. I am also the emergency operations director and do all of our emergency planning for East Bay Mud. And I always tell people I'm on the very practical side of the operation. So on a daily basis, I'm responsible for keeping the water distribution system going for 1.5 million people, 26 cities, as well as our power generation upcountry. So when something goes wrong, I'm usually the first one to hear about it. No one ever calls me when things are going right. They only call me when things are going wrong. Good afternoon.
Thank you, David. Secretary of Transportation.
Good afternoon. I'm Giles Giovinazzi. I'm the designee for the California State Transportation Agency. The secretary is Tokso Mashakin. And I'm the senior advisor at CalSTA, and I've been in my role for about 5 years and worked with Cal OES in a number of different capacities during that time. Worked with the UCG and the Homeland Security Advisory Committee and also the California Maritime Security Council. Been involved with transportation policy. I'm a lawyer by training, but been involved with transportation policy for over 20 years. Prior to joining CalSTA, I was the chief of staff at Caltrans and did federal affairs for them for a while. And prior to that, I worked in Washington, D.C. for a number of years. I was on the House Transportation Infrastructure Committee there for about 15 years, and kind of replacing Lori Pepper, the deputy secretary at CalSTA, who had been serving as the designee on this committee for the secretary. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last new member as a replacement for the Chancellor of the California State University, Jenny Novak, advises that she's unable to attend today, but looks forward to joining us at future meetings. We'll now continue with roll call. Secretary of the Natural Resources Agency.
Brian Cash here for Wade Crowfoot.
Secretary of California Health and Human Services.
Julie Soulier here for Dr. Markel.
Secretary of Business, Consumer Services, and Housing.
Hi, good afternoon. Melinda Grant, Undersecretary on behalf of Secretary Tamika Moss.
Speaker of the Assembly appointee representing the interests of private businesses.
Good afternoon. Lupita Sanchez Cornejo.
Senate Committee on Rules appointee representing county governments.
Good afternoon, Jeff Toney.
And the president representing the president of the University of California, board member Amina Asefa, was unable to attend today. We have a quorum. Thank you.
Thank you all. And I want to welcome you here. I'm Lori Najura, Deputy Director of Planning Preparedness Prevention, and I have the honor of overseeing the Seismic Hazards Branch and the Earthquake Early Warning Program. Apologies from the director. She had to be away from the campus today. We've got a lot going on, fires and public safety power shutoffs and other things going on around the state. I want to apologize ahead of time. I am not allowed to turn my phone off because I'm the executive duty officer for one more day. And I've given Jeff to my left here the job of kicking me if I nod off because I haven't been getting a lot of sleep lately. But that said, I just want to give some of Director Ward's remarks because today is kind of a momentous day here in the early fall of 2024. And it's been a while since we've all been here in person. So greetings and welcome to Cal OES's campus. Thank you for the introductions of our new members. We're so excited to have you here. And California has faced several challenges this year. We've had budget issues, a busy fire season, extreme heat, and a few tumblers. This year marks several significant anniversaries. The 5th anniversary of the Ridgecrest earthquake, 10 years since the Napa earthquake, 30 years since the Northridge earthquake, and 35 years since the Loma Prieta earthquake in the Bay Area. And that anniversary actually falls on this year's Great Shakeout. So we will get a chance to practice drop, cover, and hold on, or drop, lock, hold, and cover. Lock, cover, and hold on, sorry, in commemorating that particular event. These reminders serve as the importance of preparedness and the benefit of an earthquake early warning system. We talk a lot about the system and how the system mitigates millions of dollars in damage and helps protect millions of Californians in the event of an earthquake. But I want to emphasize the system alone is not the answer. Outreach and education to community members, businesses and governments, research and development into new and innovative signal pathways, and the dedication and support of all of you. And I'm looking beyond the horseshoe to our stakeholders and partners here that are in the audience today. You all help make California earthquake preparedness a whole of community effort. Together, we've made great strides in advancing the system operations and earthquake early warning technology implementation. And as always, I encourage you to listen to what we have to share today and think about how we can bring this technology into your sectors and expand the capabilities of earthquake early warning. We'll start today by discussing some recent seismic activity we've experienced. You'll get a chance to hear not just how the system performed as far as the number of alerts and downloads of the MyShack app, but how our earthquake early warning team enacts their rapid response. And I won't explain what that is now, I'll let them do that. Utilizing the media and messaging to spread the word about earthquake preparedness. For our sector-based implementation segment, you'll get a chance to hear updates on our implementation projects that were introduced in May of last year. And we have our partners from the Berkeley Seismology Lab here today to introduce a new software that will provide real-time data on the health of the system network. We'll also hear about their exciting and challenging expedition to the Farallon Islands to upgrade one of the few stations we have to help detect offshore seismic activity. This will be an opportunity for you to see what really goes into upgrading some of our stations. And please understand, that one is extreme. We also have our USGS partners here to provide some updates on system operation projects and the vendors who are now Shake Alert capable. Before we end with an update on the financial picture of the Earthquake Early Warning Program, we'll have the opportunity to hear about our community outreach grants and our plans for this year's Great Shakeout Tour. So once again, I want to thank our partners for taking the time to be here and presenting to us today. It's our hope that these presentations provide insight into the capabilities of the system and the benefits of earthquake early warning. To the members of the board, we hope these discussions provide awareness and spark ideas for potential projects or funding opportunities to protect the sectors that you serve. We encourage you to stay engaged and not just here today at the meeting, but always mindful about how earthquake early warning can be integrated into upcoming projects and programs being developed within your agencies or sector. In closing, I would like to take a moment to reflect on today's date. It's been 23 years since the tragedy of 9/11, when we watched speechless as the events of that unforgettable day unfolded. But a native New Yorker who lost his dearest friend once said, "When Americans lend a hand to one another, nothing is impossible." We're not about what happened on 9/11. We're about what happened on 9/12. I want you to think about that. We are not defined by tragedy, but by what is born of it. Earthquake early warning was envisioned and developed in a similar manner out of the rubble of earthquakes that have taken Californians' lives. But through a collaborative and cooperative effort, we all took the lessons learned from tragedies to help us create a path forward to creating a resilient and prepared California. Again, on behalf of Director Ward, I want to thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Director Najera. Would any other advisory board members like to make any opening remarks? With that, we'll move to review and approve the meeting minutes. There's a copy of the meeting minutes from the last meeting that was held on December 6th, 2023 in the packet you received in your email and in the folder in front of you. We'll need to approve the meeting minutes from the last meeting, as today we have a quorum. Please take a few minutes to review them.
That moves approval.
Hearing none, we do have a motion to approve the minutes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
All right, motion passes. Previous meeting minutes are approved. With that, we'll now hear from the Earthquake Early Warning System Operations Manager, Philip Labra, who will review some significant recent events that have occurred.
Apologies, I gotta log in real quick. Okay. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, board members. Today you'll be hearing from my colleagues, as well as our external partners regarding the California Earthquake Early Warning System, CEWS, health implementation and outreach efforts. I'm here to provide you with an update on the recent earthquakes events in Southern California that have garnered a great deal of media attention. Next slide. Over the past month, Southern California has experienced a series of moderate earthquakes. The Highland Park earthquake was recorded at a magnitude 4.4 on August 12th around midday. The epicenter was located in a densely populated area. As you can see on the map displayed, shaking was felt throughout the greater Los Angeles area, but shaking was also felt as far down as San Diego, according to the USGS felt reports. There were no reports of significant damage or injuries. Over 381,000 MyShake alerts were sent to devices in these areas. Google delivered over 3 million alerts to Android devices. In addition, reports from Shake Alert technical partners indicated that the shaking triggered alerts but were not high enough to activate automated actions, such as stopping trains or elevators. Now, these events serve as a real-time test for the system and a reminder to residents that we live in earthquake country and to continue to stay prepared. Next, please. During the Highland Park event, the system performed as designed and expected. On this slide, I just wanted to highlight that the Shake Alert system issued the first alert in just 4 seconds, and the MyShake app took 1.9 seconds to deliver the alert to the first device, for a total of 5.9 seconds since the initial Shake Alert message was issued. Next slide. On this slide, you'll see the breakdown of MyShake downloads by day for the Highland Park earthquake. As you can see, downloads peak following an earthquake and continues for many days. The event resulted in a notable increase in public awareness and led to the second highest number of new downloads in a 24-hour period. In total, we observed over 160,000 downloads within a week. Slide. A week prior, a community just south of Bakersfield experienced a moderate earthquake as well as a series of aftershocks. The Lamont earthquake was recorded at a magnitude 5.2 and on August 6th in the evening around 9 p.m. Shaking was felt throughout the central and southern California, with the most intense shaking felt in sparsely populated areas. Again, no reports of significant damages or injuries, but MyShake sent over 500,000 alerts to devices. Over 4.9 million alerts were delivered to Android users. And because of the earthquake magnitude being above 5, wireless emergency alerts, or WIAs, were sent out through the FEMA IPAWS, the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System. Next slide. During the Lamont earthquake, or the Lamont event, the system again performed as designed and expected. The Shake Alert system issued the first alert in 6.9 seconds. The MyShake app took 1.29 seconds to deliver the first alert to the first device, for a total of 8.18 seconds since the initial Shake Alert first message was issued. Slide. Again, you'll see the breakdown of MyShake downloads by day for the Lamont earthquake. And this event led to the highest number of new downloads in a 24-hour period. And that's just under 52,000 downloads. In total, over 7 days, we saw 137,000 downloads over the span of a week. Next slide. One of the most significant outcomes from these events has been the increased public awareness and engagement. And that's through earthquake preparedness tools such as the MyShake app. In total, the MyShake app alerted more than 800,000 devices combined for both the Lamont and the Highland Park earthquake. And we saw over 300,000 new downloads, which is a substantial spike that helps us surpass 3.5 million total downloads since the app was released in 2019. The increase shows that, one, the public is aware, and two, sees the value of having real-time alerts at their fingertips. It's also important to note that this technology is constantly evolving, and generally, as you know, the further you are away from the epicenter means more seconds of notification and time you'll have to take protective actions. During the Lamont earthquake, shaking occurred in a less densely populated area, and we saw that 92% of devices received an alert prior to feeling shaking. Because the earthquake in Los Angeles occurred in an urban setting, we know that people closest to the epicenter did not receive an alert before they felt shaking, and that is the current limitations of EEW. Now, while these earthquakes had minimal impacts to people and infrastructure, these are the types of events that we can contribute to learn from, leverage, and take advantage of to continue refining the system. Coming up, you'll hear more details about the performance of the system during the UC Berkeley presentation. But what I want to stress is the importance of these events also allows us to push out earthquake safety, awareness, and resources through strategic public messaging, as Deputy Director Nijura alluded to, in the form of post-earthquake rapid response. Next slide. So once an earthquake occurs, the EEW program identifies a targeted area to send ready-to-go preparedness messaging for the impacted communities. This is typically done through media inquiries, interviews, calls, and social media. In addition, the public safety messaging is displayed on various CalOAS platforms on our websites, including caloas.ca.gov, earthquake.ca.gov, and oesnews.com, as well as our social media accounts. This strategy helps to get messaging out quickly to the affected areas and brings awareness to those outside of those directly impacted areas to take proactive steps and to be prepared in the event of an emergency where they are, such as aftershocks. As a result of the millions of alerts that were delivered, the system, along with the MyShake app, received widespread praise over its timely alerts. This was evident in the many interviews that CalOAS was asked to participate in, the thousands of positive social media posts, and the tone of the news stories that lauded not only the timeliness of the alert, but also the benefits of having a cutting-edge system here in California. But ultimately, the best praise has come from the countless personal stories that we've heard from individuals receiving these EEW alerts and being able to take proactive actions for themselves and their families. Again, these events are a reminder that we live in earthquake country. Earthquakes are unpredictable and is the reason why we continue to push preparedness messaging. Based on where we live and how far we are from these faults and the epicenters of earthquakes, we can all experience earthquakes differently. Next slide. So moving forward, we have a discussion slide for our board members and then also for those in the audience and online. Tell us about your experience with the recent earthquakes. Did you receive an alert? Was there any discussions or conversations that happened at your level as a result? And Derek, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you for providing those updates, Philip. Deputy Director Najera, would you like to provide any comments?
Sure, yeah. I would be very interested to hear who got any of these alerts. But before we go into that discussion, I do want to say, so Cal OES, obviously, we're a part of this board. Our focus is on the California Earthquake Early Warning System, which is a portion of Shake Alert. It is Shake Alert in California, I guess is what I meant to say. And so when we do messaging out of Cal OES after an event, our first priority is public safety. So we're communicating with our local jurisdictions to make sure there's no injuries, there's no damage that we should first be focusing on. But then when we see these earthquakes that have not caused significant damage, have not caused injuries or deaths, then our immediate pivot is to earthquake preparedness and preparing yourself for the next aftershock and things like that. But I also want to acknowledge that we have partners in the room that are also messaging at the same time we are. We've got USGS is doing interviews. Obviously, when folks want to know the science behind the earthquake, that's, they'll go to USGS or our own California Geological Survey. We also go straight to CGS because they provide us with valuable information that we can then put into the State Operations Center and act on from an operational standpoint. We've got Berkeley that's being reached out to do interviews, and obviously they're the creators of the MyShake app, and see all of the comments coming in from folks that got the alerts, and that's extremely exciting. And then they're thinking, you can just see the wheels turning about how they can make it better. So there's a lot of efforts beyond what Phil just mentioned, but so there's a lot is what I'm trying to say. And hopefully you all can help us amplify the message too. So anybody receive an alert?
Got one behind you.
Yvette's from Cal OES. She's down in the south. So Santa Clarita, right?
Yes, Santa
Here, because we
Sorry. For the Lamont earthquake, I got probably about maybe 8 to 10 seconds of alerting. And so I got both the WIA and the MyShake alert. And then, several seconds later, actually felt the shaking at my house. And the alert told me, you're going to feel shaking, drop cover, hold on. It was awesome. And talking to a couple of my colleagues, they said, yeah, we got this alert. And we're like, there's an alert. Well, we didn't feel anything. And then all of a sudden, a few seconds later, they felt the shaking and they got really excited because they're like, wow, this works. So I think they really understood, because we had been talking about earthquake early warning for a while, and they had downloaded the app and they're like, okay. And then they really saw the benefit of it. So really a cool thing for them. And a lot of them were talking to neighbors and friends and family about it. So definitely the word spreads when we have great successes like that. And then also the Huntington Park event, got an alert for that one as well. I'm a little closer to that location. So I still got about probably 5 to 7 seconds of warning before that one. So again, really successful, really cool to to see it send that ping and to confirm, yeah, that was an earthquake that I felt. So definitely worked well and got to spread the word. And again, a lot of people were really excited that they had that opportunity to get an alert before they felt the shaking.
Thank you. And the floor is open to the board members in the room if they have any comment.
Thank you, Derek. We too at my house got an alert, and I think it might have been for the Highland Park one. I live in Porter Ranch in the city of LA. So it's one of the communities in LA. I had a couple of questions. As a consumer, how can we tell if it's a WIA alert or a MyShake alert? Can we tell a difference?
They look a little different, and hopefully the MyShake will come in just a couple seconds before the WIA does, just because of the way it works. I'm sorry, Bob. It's not your system, so you don't have to be that loyal to it. But I don't know if Bob, maybe in his presentation, could talk just a little bit about like what it looks like on your phone when you get the different alerts, because you may get a couple. Right.
And then I saw in the report that Philip did, 92% of the devices received an alert prior to the shaking for Longmont and not for Highland Park. And I didn't understand why the distinction.
So the closer you are to the epicenter, it takes time, right, for the stations to detect the earthquake, to estimate location, magnitude, and shaking intensity, process, get it sent out through all of the devices. So the closer you are to the epicenter, the less likely, or the diminished, I guess, advance warning you'll get. But because of the way and where the Highland earthquake happened, that provided for the maximum amount of people to get it before shaking actually arrived at their location.
For Highland Park or for Lamont?
Which one got the most?
I thought it was
Lamont.
Lamont.
I'm
Oh.
sorry,
Oh, okay.
my apologies, the Lamont got the
Okay.
most advance notice.
And there's, I definitely don't want to speak for our
Okay.
scientific partners back there, but there's other factors that can determine or affect how quickly the alert can be received, the depth of the earthquake, maybe how close it is. It usually can take like 4 sensors to be able to quickly detect. And so there could be varying factors into the delay.
Thank you.
Just a couple things. In San Diego, we're a bit too far south to feel the shaking itself. But as you know, we've embedded the technology in our Alert San Diego application. So it's a smaller pool, but kind of a good test pool for us. So we can run reports after, these types of earthquakes, because people just don't stay in San Diego, they move around the state. So 134 alerts through Alert San Diego on devices that we picked up. So I think that's successful because it's just another kind of laboratory in our app to measure the success. So these are probably great magnitude because not a lot of damage, no injuries. So it's always very exciting to see what happens post earthquake. I was hit up for a PBS interview, which I did locally in San Diego. So just spread the word, drop, cover, hold on, et cetera. So it's great that we're leveraging these events to promote the outreach and education. So.
Okay. Yes, Angie Gibson with PG&E.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. So we did have quite a few of our coworkers that felt the Lamont and actually got the shake alert because the day before we pushed MyShake as a mandatory application to all of our 28,000 coworker cell phones. And so previously they did not have MyShake. And so the next day it was almost like, hey, we gave you an app and we're going to test it. But it was a real event. So we did get a lot of really positive feedback from that.
Thank you, Angie.
Any other board members or any comments on this topic? All right, with that, yeah.
So if you don't download the app, you would still get a WIA alert. So now it's just double, I guess, alerts.
Yeah, there's apps that are enabled with the shake alert signal. And then those are at a little bit lower threshold at a 4.5 intensity shaking by magnitude. The WIA is at a little higher threshold. So not all events will trigger both, maybe just the app. Which is why Bob was saying the more the merrier, get those apps on your phone. And we just want to make sure that you're notified.
Okay. With that, we will now move into the sector-based implementation portion of our meeting. We'll start with status updates on our implementation projects from our Research and Development Lead Coordinator, Megan Sullivan.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Megan Sullivan, and I'm the Research and Development Coordinator for the Cal OES Earthquake Early Warning Program. I'm very excited to provide you all with updates to our implementation projects across several sectors. And some of these projects you may have heard before, and some are new. And the first project I will go over with you guys is Data Casting Phase 2. So next slide, please. Phase 2 will build upon the established network of existing high-power over-the-air data-capable transmitters currently serving the metropolitan areas of Sacramento, San Francisco, Fresno, Los Angeles, and San Diego. A $500,000 grant from Cal OES allowed America's public television stations and California Public Television to equip an additional 6 public television stations in California for the insertion of alert messages into their digital over-the-air signals. The equipment will continue to receive alerts from the United States Geological Survey and Cal OES over secure network connections. Special receivers connected to the signal will provide output in various forms, including control switch signals, text, audio, and video. The identified public television stations include Eureka, Redding, Reno, Rohnert Park, San Bernardino, and a second station in Los Angeles. Even though the Reno station is located out of state, it services a very large area in Eastern California, which has very limited service. The addition of these 6 stations will increase the number of individuals served within the state to 34,337,700 individuals. To date, 4 out of the 6 stations have been installed with the data casting equipment and are connected to the signal. This project will be completed by December of 2024. Next slide. Another project that we are working on is receiver funding for data casting. So per Assembly Bill AB 102, the Budget Act of 2023 made appropriations for the support of state government for the 2023-24 fiscal year. AB 102 included amendments to the appropriations, including the addition of $500,000 to be used for the purchase and installation of receiver boxes that utilize signals from the California Public Television Network to provide early warnings and information during earthquakes and other emergencies. Cal OES Earthquake Early Warning Program will be the entity receiving the funds and distributing them through a grant to APTS for the purchase of receivers, either consumer or enterprise. These receivers will have the capability to issue alerts and automated actions. This ultimately will be the final phase of the data casting pilot implementation project. We will be focusing on distributing these receivers to the first responder sector in seismically vulnerable and hard to reach places within California. This includes emergency operations centers and volunteer fire stations. This project will be completed by December of 2025. Next slide. The next project I'll be going over is our EEW Fire Stations Pilot Project. So in coordination with the Cal OES Fire and Rescue Branch, the Cal OES Office of Tribal Coordination, and the Cal OES Grants Processing Unit, We are really excited to announce that the EEW Fire Station Pilot Project has officially launched through a $500,000 grant that was administered between 3 fire departments. These fire departments include Los Angeles County Fire, Morongo Reservation Fire, and San Bernardino County Fire. These fire departments were identified through a predetermined methodology, which includes a social vulnerability index of 0.6 and above, located in a seismically vulnerable area and housing a Cal OES fire asset. The goal of this project is to implement and integrate EEW technology and automated actions within fire stations, and this includes bay door automation. We saw the need for this project from the magnitude 6.4 Ferndale earthquake in December of 2022, which caused the Rio Del Fire Department's bay doors to be jammed shut. This negatively impacted the response time of the firefighters to the calls post-earthquake. This project recently kicked off in July, and the grant will go through December of 2025. Next slide. The final project that I will be providing updates to you guys is the EEW Airport Feasibility Study. For the implementation of EEW within airports as part of Phase 1 for transportation, Cal OES has been coordinating with several stakeholders, including the California State Transportation Agency, UC Berkeley Resilient and Innovative Mobility Initiative, or RIMI, PEER, Caltrans, and the UC Berkeley Seismology Lab. After several planning sessions, it was determined by all partners and our research team that using a phased approach to the implementation of EEW within airports, starting with a feasibility study, would be the best starting point. The assessment of these airports and the development of a feasibility study would identify the most appropriate technologies needed for each airport, the stakeholders that will need to be involved, and determine any requirements and all the necessary steps to efficiently and effectively implement EEW and applicable automated actions in each airport. The airports that are participating in this study are LAX and Palm Springs Airport. We chose LAX because this is a large international airport that is multimodal, has millions of annual passengers, and are already beginning EEW implementation with its people moving devices. In contrast, Palm Springs Airport was chosen because it is a smaller scale airport and is nearly located to the active spreading center of the San Andreas Fault. LAX and Palm Springs both support regular flights from all major airports in the state. The study will not only bolster the resiliency and continuity of operations, but will serve as a model we hope to duplicate throughout the state at other airports. This feasibility study will be completed in April of 2025. And I will turn it back over to Derek. Thank you.
Thank you, and you can advance this slide. Thank you, Megan. We will put up discussion questions to hopefully spark discussion. The first one would be, what are the challenges that constrain or delay EEW implementation? And then question 2, what does implementation look like in your industry? You are not beholden by these questions. We're open to discuss or take the discussion wherever the board would like, but these are just to assist. With that, Deputy Director, do you have any comments?
With regard to the data casting pilot, so I just want to make sure that I understand and that the board understands. Right now, having gone through almost completed Phase 1, the public television stations are equipped to send out the shake alert signal. But until we actually get the receivers, there's like nothing out there to pick it up, like we do with our phones, right? Okay. So do we know if in some of these recent earthquakes that we've had, have those signals gone out from the television stations?
Yes, they have for both of the Southern California earthquakes.
Excellent. So proof of concept right there, right? So Phase 2, when we get these receivers out there, then we'll start seeing the end user get the signal. Okay, thank you.
And it's now open to the board. If you'd like to provide comment, just push the button and turn the light green.
Hi, quick question for Megan. Broadcast television, is that over the airwaves, not cable? It's over the airwaves. It's not, I mean, I'm just trying to think of how many people watch TV over broadcast, over airways versus cable or streaming or what have you?
I will actually turn it over to one of our partners that is on the line. So John McCoskey, he's with SpectraUp. That's who we're working with. He's a technical expert when it comes to data casting.
Thank
John,
you,
are you
Megan.
on the line?
Yes, can
Perfect.
you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, thanks, Megan. Great question. So although it's using public television as the transmission infrastructure, it has really nothing to do with TV. So it's using the television transmitters to transmit a digital version of that shake alert message out over the coverage of television, but it doesn't actually go to TVs. It goes to specialized receivers that receive that signal and then peel off the alert. Does that make sense?
How would I get it as an individual? Would I get it, watching my computer streaming or my television, my flat screen TV on the wall, or my phone? How would I get it?
So you would have a standalone receiver device. Think of it like a smoke detector or a carbon monoxide detector that is receiving the TV signal, and that device will actually alert you with a loud tone like a smoke detector and then audible instructions on what action to take. So it's a separate receiver. It's not going to your TV or to the phone that you have today. It is a separate receiver.
Good question, David, if I may interject, and John, you can correct me or amplify. So in time, we're hoping that every TV that's constructed and sold will contain this receiver. It's not happening right now, but it's just like everything. Remember when all televisions went HD? There was like a transition period. We're hoping that that's where we'll get so that we can get so that this shake alert signal will be ubiquitous and it'll go into every household that has a television. Am I saying that right, John?
Yeah, the potential is certainly there to do that. And to your point, most people don't get their television over the air. They get it through cable or internet today. But if you're in the coverage of the California stations, and that's the coverage that Megan was saying reaches about 34 million California residents, you can receive that signal on a TV, on a standalone receiver, anywhere in that footprint.
The follow-up question to that, how would a consumer or a business or an emergency services organization get one of these receivers?
So there's a commercial partner that is building these receivers. The company is called Clover Alert, and you can buy them online.
And just to recap what Megan presented, there's technically been 3 data casting projects. So the first one was a few years ago to implement the technology and instrument the about half of the California public stations so that they could produce this signal. Then the second phase, phase 2, was to instrument the remaining stations and to boost the ability and capability of data casting. And the third part is to provide the receivers as many as we can. And again, with all of our projects, they're pilot projects geared to try and spark awareness, prove that the technology works, and then hopefully garner enough interest maybe from private industry to take it further. Any other questions or comments from the board on this topic?
Has there been any pilots that focus on healthcare, like hospitals?
So what I'll tell you is, from our perspective, we plan to go sector by sector with pilot projects. It just takes time and funding, but hospitals are definitely on our radar. Our partners with Shake Alert have engaged with hospitals as well. So it is a team effort, but definitely something we'd like to do. And I would tell you, with the feasibility, the airport feasibility project, that was kind of sparked by you all, by the board. So Lori Pepper really helped align us and put us on a path to embark on that project. And so we're always open to work with the board in your sectors as well.
If you have an idea, let us know. The next funding cycle obviously started on July 1. So we'll be creating a spending plan. And, you know, we've embarked now on a couple multi-year projects. So we have the budgetary capability of extending our projects now a little bit. So if you have an idea for one, let's talk about it.
Okay, well, thank you, Megan. With that, we'll now move on in the agenda to research and development with a presentation from our partners with the UC Berkeley Seismology Lab. With that, I'd like to introduce Julian Marti, the operations manager with the Berkeley Seismology Lab, who's here to discuss a new software that will help assist in determining the health of the EEW system.
Good afternoon. I don't see the presentation here. Only here. Okay. Okay. So yes, good afternoon, and thank you for inviting me to give that presentation today. I think a few years ago, our colleagues from CalOES, they asked us if there would be a way to try to estimate the performance of the system in real time, the California earthquake early warning system. In other words, if there would be an earthquake right now at a specific location in California, what will be the performance of the system? And behind that question is the objective to try to make the best decisions in terms of operation and maintenance for the network, for the system in general. For example, if 20 stations would be down right now, seismic stations that contribute to the detection capability of the network, which one should be fixed in priority? By fixing which one would we get the biggest impact on the performance of the network? Next slide. But before I talk about that specific project, I wanted just to show you briefly how do we currently monitor the performance of the system. And by system, I really mean the full system, not only the network of station or the algorithm, but really the production of the alert, the delivery of the alert to the LTOs, and the delivery of the alert by the LTOs to the end users and the public. So we're going to look at the full system performance. The next slide. Okay, so one common way to look at the system performance, and as of right now, we look at this system performance a little bit component by component. So first very important component for the system is this network of seismic stations. That's the status of the network in 2015. You see on the right the status of the network as of now. You see that the size of the network is more than doubled between 2015 and now. We are now almost 90% complete. And of course, that's a very important parameter, because the denser the network is, the faster we would be able to alert people. And the larger would be the number of people alerted on time. So that's one very important factor. This the fact that we are densifying this network of station with particular emphasis on the area with high risk and high population. Right. Another way to look also at the system performance, because the system has been operational since 2019, is how many true alerts have we issued already. So alert with a magnitude over 4.5. And you can see that over the last 5 years, we have issued more than 106 alerts, true alert. That means more than 20 alerts a year. And you can see that we have alerted more or less all the areas in California. So those are all the green dots that you see on the map. And those are all the earthquakes for which we have accurately estimated the location and the magnitude. Next slide. There were also a few cases, and in fact, it was rather at the beginning of the operation of the system, where we had false alert, which means In fact, there was an earthquake, but we did not manage to locate that earthquake too accurately or accurately enough. So those are what we call false alert. We alerted a certain area, but the earthquake was slightly off that area. The other thing we are looking at, and again, there was none of that recently, but this missed alert. So which means that there was an earthquake and we did not alert for that earthquake. You see that those missed alerts, they are all at the edge of the network. And in fact, again, those happened quite some time ago, and we have put in place measures since then, and we have not seen any of that recently. So we are very happy with the performance of the network as of now, and especially the very high number of true alerts that were issued over the last 5 years. So that's one other way to look at the system performance. Next slide. But of course, what's important, okay, we managed to create this alert on a very short time period, but do we manage to deliver them on time to the people, to the public, and to the LTO's partner? So one way we can look at that is by using data which is provided by the MyShake application. So what you see on this map is an example for one of the earthquakes that was highlighted by Phil, the Lamont earthquake last month, magnitude 5.2. MyShake alerted more than 500,000 people. What you see on the map, the background, the colors is the shaking intensity that was felt by people, and the blue circles that you see, they represent the warning time that people had. Those are not estimates; those are real data that we got from the phones. So again, I'm sorry because I don't have the screen in front of me, but you see that here's got like up to 35 seconds. And in fact, that's a very good case, as I think there was a question from one of the board members earlier, because the epicenter of the earthquake was outside the LA metropolitan area. And we don't have, sorry, I should start by maybe highlighting something. This black circle that you see is what we call the blind zone. The blind zone is the zone where we don't manage to alert people on time. Why is that? Because the wave that comes from the earthquake at the surface, in fact, this is when they reach the surface that we also detect them with our seismic network. So it's absolutely impossible that we alert this blind zone on time because our system detects it at the same time as people are feeling the shaking. So if that blind zone is not in a populated area, that's good news. And the population live outside that blind zone, we will be able to alert them on time. And that's why I took, next slide, please. So yeah, next, yeah. So on that slide, this is a figure that in fact demonstrates the number that Phil gave earlier, that 92% of the people receive an alert on time for that specific earthquake. And you see all the green dots you see in, I mean, that's a plot. So on the horizontal axis, you have the distance from the earthquake. On the vertical axis, you have the time that people got between the time they received the alert and the time they feel the beginning of the shaking. And you see that all the green dots are devices that receive the alert on time. So that's a very good example, the Lamont event. I just took another example to show you a different scenario. Next slide. That was 2 years ago. I took that example because it was a very similar magnitude 5.1, but this one was in the Bay Area. The epicenter was very close to San Jose downtown. And you see in that case, of course, the blind zone cover a highly populated area. Again, MyShake issued like a little bit more than 100,000 alerts to devices. You see again, so this blue circle that shows the warning time the people had in the Bay Area. But if we go to the next slide, you'll see that about 2/3 of the people received the alert on time because there was about 1/3 of the people living in this blind zone. And that's something that is going to change. But again, very good performance, even for an earthquake with an epicenter in a highly populated area. Okay, so we have seen, so that's another way to assess the system performance. Do we manage to deliver alerts on time to the public? That's very important, of course. And the next thing, of course, is the public, do the public find this alert useful? I mean, next slide. So one mechanism through which we receive a lot of feedback for the MyShake application in particular are the Twitter, the App Store, the Google Play Store, emails. So My plan was to read some of them to you, but I don't have a screen in front of me, and that's going to be a little bit challenging. But basically, what's very interesting is we got very similar comments that we got from the board's room. Some people saying that they received the alert, they had the app installed for a very long time. They were not sure if it was useful, and they got alerted for the first time, and then they thought it was a kind of magic. We had some saying that they felt like a prophet, and people that others that says that. Oh, thank you, Richard. And so also that allows us to validate some of the features of the MyShake application, that even if your phone is on silent mode, your phone should still deliver the alert with a voice. And even so, for example, one of the users saying that his phone was set to silent, so no sounds during the evening, but the app overrode that and started alerting, talking to me to get us to a safe location and take cover. About 10 seconds later, very similarly to what Yvette described, the earthquake hit us and the whole house rolled with the quake. The app displays earthquake of all over the world, nearby you, etc. It has a wealth of info. I find it invaluable. Now that I experienced the early warning for the first time, kudos to the team that created this great app. I'm not going to read all of them, but that's a mechanism through which we can also validate these features and also get a sense that people find these alerts very useful. Next slide. That's also something that was highlighted by Phil just before. We also monitor the performance of the system by looking at the number of newly registered users we have for the MyShake application. Those are the number of users or new users after both the Highland Park event and the Lamont event. And as Phil highlighted, we got more than 300,000 newly registered users over a period of 10 days. So this is where we see that also probably those who receive an alert talk to their friends, their colleagues, and we get a very high number of downloads after these two events. And we took those events as an example because they just happened last month. Next slide. So in terms of system performance, what we have seen is that as of right now, we mainly evaluate the system performance through quality control processes because we have very often earthquake in California. So because the system has been operational since 2019, we alert for these earthquakes. Sometimes we realize that things did not work exactly as planned, and then we can fix the system. We have this feedback loop, and that really have allowed us over the last years to implement a number of changes and to have the system performing better and better. There are cases also where we need strong quality assurance processes. For example, when we want to improve the algorithm and push a new algorithm in production, we're not going to just push it and wait for the next earthquake to see if it works. Of course, we're going to test that on all the past data that was collected over the last years, also on a big database, including data for large historical events. So now the question is, would there be a possibility to do that or to estimate, as I said in introduction, the performance of the system as of right now, if there would be a specific earthquake at a specific, if there would be an earthquake at a specific location in California, and what kind of metric could we use to monitor this process? Next slide. So basically, what we are trying to do is to anticipate the system performance. And we would like to develop, the objective was to develop a set of maps that would give us a sense of the system performance. And optimally, we should take into account the status of the network as of right now, which means not this theoretical network with all the stations that are been built and should be contributed to Shake Alert, but the list of stations that are contributing as of right now, because we always have stations that are down. We have stations that from which the data might not arrive on time as of right now. Maybe some don't have are a little bit noisy, so we will not be able to use the data from that station as of right now. That would be the main point, taking into account a lot of, I would say more like IT parameter into account, such as the data packet size, the time for the data to be transmitted from the station to the data center, and the processing time. And as we saw also in the previous slide, taking into account the time to deliver that alert to the public, and also how the population is distributed, and what is the anticipated risk in terms of earthquakes throughout the state. Next slide. So now I'm going to bring you through a set of maps. I'm going to try to explain them one by one. So we have, so those maps, they are generated every 10 minutes. They are updated in real time every 10 minutes. And what I'm gonna start with is this map of stations that are which was the status of the network at the time I prepared the presentation, so about 10 years ago, 10 days ago, sorry, I don't know. And I was thinking about something else in parallel. 10 minutes, so 10 days ago. And as you can see, also, I mean, you saw on my first slide, all these sites, they belong to queues as of right now, but they are not all online. So if they are green, they dark green, it means that they are operational and sending data within less than 2 seconds. So the data from this site can be used for earthquake early warning. If it's light green, data is arriving a little bit late, but they can still contribute in most of the cases. If it starts becoming red, it means the station is either down or the data is not transmitting fast enough to be used by the earthquake early warning system. So already start giving a slightly different pictures from the theoretical network where you would take into account all the stations that have been constructed so far. So that's the first step. Second, next slide, please. Okay, and now that's a different kind of map. And we're gonna see several of those maps. The first step is, so what we do with this model here is each pixel you see on the map represent the location of an earthquake. So for each of these pixels, we simulate that there is an earthquake, and we see how long it will take for the P wave, the first wave of that earthquake, to propagate to the 4 closest stations. Why the 4 closest stations? Because the main, I mean, one of the main algorithm that alert the fastest will need at least to have detection from 4 sites in order to trigger an alert. So how long it's going to take in seconds, so the color represents the time in seconds for this wave to reach the 4 closest stations. So for example, in the Bay Area or LA downtown, because the network of stations is very dense, you see that within less than 2 seconds already, the wave would have propagated to at least 4 stations. So that gives us, so that's the first time we are looking at. Next slide. Then the second thing is the time to create the alerts. So again, all these maps, they are updated every 10 minutes. Now we are looking at not only the time to reach these 4 stations, but the time to transmit the data from this station to the data center. That's very important. And that's again, that's an estimate as of right now, which means we monitor this latency between the station and the data center in real time. And we are adding the average latency over the last 10 minutes. Plus we add the processing time and a few, as I said, parameters to really represent accurately the time it would take to create an alert. So again, on this map, the color represents, depending on the regions in California, how long it will take for the system to create an alert. That's the second stage. Next slide. Now the time to distribute the alert. So to that, we add a time that it will take for MyShake to distribute the alert to the public. And again, you see that, of course, in the areas where the network of station is denser, like LA downtown and the Bay Area, we manage to alert, again, the public faster, simply because the network has a higher density. Now, the next step is going to be to convert that time into information about what is the population that will or will not receive an alert on time. We know that, so for each dislocation, how long it will take for the alert to be created. So we can calculate how long the S wave will have time to propagate, which means we'll calculate the size of this blind zone, and we'll look at how many people live in this blind zone. So how many people will not receive an alert on time for each of these locations. Next slide. And that's this map. So of course, you see that this map is much more driven by the population distribution throughout California. The color here represents, again, if you look at each pixel on the map, it means if there would be an earthquake at that location, how many people might not receive an alert on time. And so, of course, if there would be an earthquake right downtown LA or right downtown San Francisco, because as we saw also with the Alum Rock event, because there is a large population living there, the size, I mean, the blind zone will be over that area, and a larger number of people will not be alerted on time. But it doesn't mean that LA will never be alerted on time. As we saw in the case of the Lamont event, if the earthquake is slightly outside LA, and this is why this area outside LA is dark blue, we will manage to alert LA on time, and everybody in LA will receive an alert before they feel the main shake. Next slide. The next thing we looked at is also we wanted to include also a little bit in those calculations the probability that to take into account the earthquake risk. And what we take into account here is the probability that there will be an earthquake with an intensity over 8 over the next 50 years. And if this probability is lower than 2%, we kind of remove these areas of California. And that's a mechanism. And again, we tested that for different intensity levels, 7, 8, 9. It's just to give a sense, again, a little bit of priorities and what we would expect over the next 50 years. Next slide. So now what we combine here is those background color that we have seen that give us an indication of how many people will not receive an alert on time with the network of stations. And what we're going to manage to do here is look at the stations that are down throughout the state and see what station would have the biggest impact if they are down, for example, by fixing that station, what way would have the biggest impact in reducing the number of people that will not receive an alert on time. And that's kind of one of the final products. We're going to zoom on it. I think I have just one last slide related to, next slide also to see exactly. So, and on each, that's the beginning of a slightly separate project, but now for each of these stations, you can click on it, see who it belongs to, because we have many different partners operating this station, and have a little bit of state of health information regarding that site to try to understand how noisy it is, how it contributes to the queue system, and what's the latency between the station and the data center. Next slide. So I just zoom on the same map, but in the Bay Area. And it was just to show you that, and I don't think I have a pointer, but for example, you see some stations that are red at the top of the map. And we see that even if we would fix those stations, most likely we will not expect that we will manage to alert a significantly higher number of people online. It's still important to fix them for different reasons. But for example, we see that some stations in the Bay Area are red, and by fixing those stations, most likely we will get a much bigger impact on improving the system performance. That was one of the objectives of that tool, to prioritize station maintenance action, to support station troubleshooting, as we saw with the display of state of health information, and potentially to start identifying gaps in network coverage and optimize station relocations or construction in the future. Next slide. And just a few sentences about the next step. The next step for the project, to try to display slightly more state of health information for each of the stations. That's a challenge because we have to collect that information from all our different partners, and there are many. To try also to take into account data quality. We know that some stations although they might be sending data in real time, might not be able to contribute at a certain point in time because of surrounding noise. And it's something maybe slightly more complicated, but try also, we have seen that when there are very large earthquakes, that can impact the IT system that are used to transfer the data between the station and the data center, and maybe try to take that into account to make more realistic estimations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Julien. Would you like to provide any comments, Deputy Director?
No, thank you for that explanation of how the system works, at the same time, how you're determining the performance of the system. Appreciate that. Well, I guess one question would be, so what you know now, have you been able to develop any recommendations on stations like right now that we should be looking at? Updating or fixing?
Yeah, exactly. In fact, even the first time we came up with those maps, I think it was when we even got the prototype maps about a year ago, we realized that some areas in the Bay Area, we could really improve the performance of the system in certain area of the Bay Area. And right away, we talked with our colleagues operating station in the area, and we fixed those stations. And then we saw that immediately there was an impact with many more people alerted on time by just fixing 2 of 3 stations at the right location. So I think, in fact, we have presented those results in several venue conferences, meeting, and even some of the partners who operate network in Oregon and Washington State, they have asked us whether we could also provide or compute that information for them because they find it extremely.
Thank you. And the floor is open to any board members.
Yeah, I'm not a board member anymore, but I just squatted at the table. So Julian, thank you for working with Megan Stanton. So Megan Stanton is our seismologist at Pacific Gas and Electric, and we are currently partnering with Julian to install additional stations in the Walker Lane region, fault zone, as well as any other locations that you can find. We're happy to sponsor those stations at our facilities.
Thank you to you, actually, and we look exactly also at those results to try to identify if there would be the possibility to add station where it would have the biggest impact, again, in terms of network performance. And thanks to the funding you're providing, we will be able to improve the detection and the alert time in those areas. So thanks a lot for your contribution.
Thanks, Derek. Julian, thank you for your presentation. Very helpful. A couple quick questions for you. I see you guys are about 90% built out. Do you know when you're going to hit the 100% mark, or are you going to go beyond that? What's the ultimate goal?
Well, as I say, that's a work that involves many partners, so our colleagues from the USGS, from Caltech, CGS, and other partners. So we are all trying to complete that network. I think one of the goals that was set 4 or 5 years ago was to try to have the network as complete as possible by end of 2025. If I speak for Berkeley only, we have 25 stations left to install. In fact, only one of them has not been constructed. So for only one of them, we need to construct the infrastructure. For 24 remaining stations, we just need to install the equipment. So we feel we are on track for completing our piece of the network by maybe mid or end of 2025. And I think that will be the case for most of our partners as well.
And just another technical question. How do the stations transmit their data? Are they hardwired into internet, or how does that work?
It's an excellent question. And there are two answers to that question. Okay, so the first part would be, there is all different kind of communication system. Most of them actually send data through cell modem. But we also have direct connection to some local internet provider. We have satellite connection. We have the first station, especially in very remote areas, sending data through Starlink. We have also a station sending data through radio network. And a very important piece, in fact, in terms of communication system for the network is the piece which is provided by CalOES, the PSC network. So the goal is to have about 25% of the station in California sending data through this emergency communication system. So even in the case of a major disruption, for example, of the cell network, we will still be able to transmit data from those stations to our data center. And that's very important in the framework, for example, of major earthquakes with a lot of aftershocks. You can imagine the cell network will be disrupted, but we will still be able to somehow locate those earthquakes thanks to that data that will be transmitted through the PSC network to our data centers. And the other part of the question, because that's a very important topic, telemetry, we are also trying, there are a lot of projects to try to make that even more robust by even trying to have what we call dual telemetry. So each station will send data to our data centers through 2 different mechanisms. One could be PSC, for example, the other one could be cell modem, in order to make sure that whatever disruption we have, data will be transmitted in any case.
Question. So when you talk about maintaining the systems, is there a common failure that you see, software, hardware, line of sight, comm, vandalism? I mean, is there something that happens commonly, or is it across the board, everything?
It's a very good question as well. a large number of stations are pretty new. So those stations, because you saw over the last 5 years, the station were added to the system, those stations tend to perform quite well. We still have a number of stations that were grandfathered in that are historical stations for which maybe still now we don't have a completely reliable power or telemetry system. So that's something we're also working on in parallel. But if we will look overall the big picture, I think most of the issues right now that will make that a station do not contribute to the network would be linked to the telemetry and the fact that we might not have a reliable connection, radio, let's say a telecommunication connection between the station and the data center. We have also a few issues linked to power, and there is always a broad range of issues such as a station which burned down during a wildfire or was vandalized, or et cetera, et cetera.
Thanks. Just real quick follow-up. So at any given time, you can tell how many are up and running. And do you have a threshold? I mean, the methodology that you just outlined basically allows you to prioritize which ones are going to create the most value if you'll maintain those. But do you also have, an overall metric like we want at least 90% of these things working at any given point in time? Otherwise, we have to run out and address it.
Yes, it's a very good point, and this is exactly what we are trying to do under the leadership of our colleagues at Cal OES. We met several times this year with all our other partners, the USGS, Caltech, CGS, to try to determine exactly that what would be an acceptable threshold in order for us to take maybe more significant actions. And again, we are not sure if a value across the network will be necessary. I mean, I think it would be important in any case, but more importantly, sometimes if we have like 4 or 5 stations failing in the same area, that's much more important to focus, for example, on that area than on other stations, and also taking into account the information that we display. So it's more about ensuring that the network still perform more or less close to the baseline that has been established, knowing that there are areas, as I said, yet because of the population or the risk, we will be always limited in some ways.
Okay, we were going to reserve public comment till the end of the meeting, but since we've opened it previously, we will take, I believe we have a couple of questions online.
First question is the time to distribute the alert inclusive of the time to detect and process the alert, or is it additive to the prior time estimates?
No, it includes everything. It's an excellent question. That's really the time to distribute the alert, taking into account even the P wave to reach the station, the time for the data to be transmitted from the station to the data center, everything.
And then the second question is, where can we view the station status information? Is that live to the public yet?
So as of right now, because this was developed as a kind of prototype project, we store all this information in a database. We share that information in real time with Cal OES, and then I guess we will discuss with our colleagues from Cal OES in the future what this data could be shared.
All right, seeing no other public comments in the room, any other comments from the board? All right, hearing none. With that, we will now move to the break. So we'll have 10 minutes to take a break. There are refreshments over here by the table. It'll be 10 minutes, so let's expect to be back at 2:35. Thank you. That doesn't surprise me at all. All right, we'll bring the meeting back to order here in just another minute or two. Okay, we will begin the second half of the EEW Advisory Board meeting. We will have System Operations Manager Philip Labra provide an update on system operations, followed by a presentation from our partners with the United States Geological Survey and the UC Berkeley Seismology Lab.
Thank you, Derek. Board members, hello again. Thankfully, these slides are a little bit shorter because Julian did a great job of covering a lot of the questions and a lot of the details. Next slide. But this is just a quick update on the network. And again, like I mentioned, Julian covered a broad range of topics and discussions, as well as a lot of details regarding the performance health, status, and how it's doing overall. The California Earthquake Early Warning System, which is powered by Shake Alert, is a network of contributing stations that detect earthquakes and determine if an event meets the threshold to send out alerts. Just a few metrics to share here. Our partners have reported that there are currently 996 stations online and contributing, and that's out of the 1,115 station goal that we have. Again, somebody brought it up about 90%. I think that was Jeff. This is in addition of 21 stations online and contributing since the last report in December 2023 to the board members. And next slide. And real quick, 702 is the number of CEWS funded planned stations. Cal OES and our partners have completed 699 out of the 702 planned from the CEWS funded EEW stations. In addition, at the bottom, Cal OES Public Safety Communications continues to work with our partners here in the room to connect EEW stations into the state microwave network and also to secure tower and vault leases. There are 9 additional EEW stations that have been brought online and connected to the state microwave system for a total of 123 out of 322, with 199 remaining. That's it for my report.
Thank you, Philip. Now I'd like to introduce Bob DeGroot, Coordinator for Communication, Education, Outreach, and Technical Engagement with the United States Geological Survey, who's here to provide an update on Shake Alert.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be here today. And I'd just like to amplify what Derek said earlier about the nature, the collaborative nature of the work that we do in all things that is earthquake early warning. And this also applies very heavily in the area of technical engagement. And what our collective goal is the building of an earthquake early warning industry. So if I could go to the next slide, please. So I'm just going to cover a few topics today. Just a little summary. Next slide, please. So we have 14 licensed operators, and basically those entities are allowed to sell and or distribute Shake Alert powered products and services. And so we have 14 of them now, as I mentioned earlier. And I just wanted to highlight 2, but also bring in one that was discussed earlier today by Megan related to data casting and kind of where that's going. So 2 that are of great interest is Kinemetrics in Pasadena's longtime supplier of high quality seismic equipment for use across the board over the years. And many of us are familiar with Kinemetrics. They have several existing systems where they have been monitoring building safety, and they've used this for years. And what they've done is they've integrated Shake Alert into their systems. So in addition to what they're doing with building health, in other words, to let people know about the safety of a building to return into a building, or what to do if a building shakes and if something is compromised, shaking levels reach certain levels, to do something about it. They've now integrated Shake Alert in part of that equation. And this is actually a pattern that we're seeing with several of our partners in the notion of taking existing systems and improving them and integrating Shake Alert. And the best example I can think of is Metrolink, that used a technology that was integrated positive train control, which you may be familiar with, prevents trains from overspeeding and that sort of thing. And they built something called the commuter railway, seismic interface, or CRESI, that essentially marries Shake Alert with positive train control. So now Metrolink across all of its lines in Southern California is able to slow down trains or stop them automatically. And the other, so Kinemetrics is one of our recent LTOs. The next one is the Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, of course, the sort of epicenter, so to speak, of robotic exploration of the universe. And it's an extremely interesting place. They also happen to build it right up against a very active fault system. Well, not so active, but it has had an earthquake back in 1971. But they too are interested in incorporating Shake Alert into their facility, and they are now doing public alerting over PA systems, and also the opening of the firehouse doors. Now they're up and running with this. Their next step is to integrate Shake Alert into the Deep Space Network, which is 3 antennas located roughly 120 degrees apart on Earth, one on the southeastern part of Australia, Canberra, one smack in the middle of Spain in Madrid, and the third here in California near Barstow, a place called Goldstone. And so the Goldstone facility is going to be powered by Shake Alert very soon. They're in the process of going in that direction. So we're seeing some very interesting integrations. Next slide, please. Yeah, thanks. So just showing on the right here is we've been doing a series of case studies about our implementations, and it's something that we make available to people who may be interested in doing something around Shake Alert, but also just to give the public a perspective of how Shake Alert is actually being used in the real world. And that's something that's become critically important, especially when the build out is completed in later next year. We have a project running where we're still trying to figure out the best way to expand the earthquake early warning industry. And we're approaching it from 2 different directions. One is to increase the number of LTOs, which is actually the topic of this project, TIES. It's the Technical Industry Engagement Strategy Project. And we're now in the second year. The first year was devoted to working with a contractor to scope out what would be some of the best approaches. We've decided what that is, and we're going to go for it this second year and focusing on sort of contractors that can do very specific things for us and help us in specific areas. So we have an advisory team that's been part of this. Of course, Cal OES has been involved in this advisory team. We call it a focus team. It's a group that gets involved with monitoring, overseeing the project, also learning from it. So we can continue to learn about airports and implementations in hospitals and those sorts of things. And so our goal over this year is to continue that exploration into increasing the number of LTOs. And we see value in this because we know that there are still untapped things to discover about what we can be doing with the data from the Shake Alert system. And we hope to discover this through these very targeted interviews. And of course, there's a lot of great stuff going on with the airport study and also with the data casting work done as well. And I was going to mention a little bit about the data casting stuff earlier. With regard to that, yes, there is actually a test group that has the dedicated devices. I don't know if John McCoskey is still on the call or not, but there is a dedicated group of field testers who have been testing, and there have been people who have received, I think mentioned earlier, who have received alerts from the alerts from that system on those dedicated devices. And of course, one thing guiding our definition of critical facilities is stuff at the federal level, what are considered critical sectors, things that need to be up and running, things that are critical, not just to protect during shaking, but things that you need after the shaking is over. And so we're following the Presidential Policy Directive 21 or PPD 21 to do that. Next slide, please. So I would like to show you, this is the interactive multimedia section. Thank you for the work that you've done to integrate it. So another integration which hasn't been talked about at all today, which is critically important, especially for the biggest of earthquakes, which we all know that the big ones, we talk about the big ones all the time, the big ones are possible. We have the Cascadia subduction zone, about 700 miles long from Northern California up into British Columbia. And we have, of course, the San Andreas fault system, which runs roughly the spine of California in the order of 800 miles long. So the integration of Global Navigation Satellite System, GNSS, or more colloquially here, and actually we use it very commonly as GPS. In fact, the data coming from global navigation satellite systems currently into the Shaker system is only coming from the US system, the GPS system. So if we could play the short, this is a 2-minute video. This is available in English and Spanish. And it's, I'll show you the web link here in a second. Go ahead and play it. Thanks.
The Shaker Earthquake Early Warning System is making you even safer by combining GPS data with seismic data to more accurately size up big earthquakes. In Map View, you can watch multiple GPS and seismic sensors react to a major and dangerous earthquake as it ruptures along a fault. Seismometers provide the quickest epicentral location. As the rupture progresses, the cacophony of seismic waves can overload seismometers for magnitude 7 and above. GPS sensors anchored to the ground move as the ground moves, thus continuously measure the displacement. Using GPS sensors is a crucial improvement that enables the Shake Alert system to more accurately estimate the magnitude of major and great earthquakes. The magnitude 7.1 Ridgecrest earthquake shifted the ground near the epicenter over 60 centimeters, which was directly measurable by the GPS receivers. Similar and larger shifts can and have occurred along the San Andreas Fault in California. Impending subduction zone earthquakes in the Pacific Northwest, which may be similar to the 2011 magnitude 9.1 earthquake in Japan, underscore the importance of incorporating GPS data into the Shake Alert system. GPS sensors measured that the eastern coast of Japan shifted eastward 2.4 meters during the earthquake. Larger underwater displacement caused the massive tsunami. Such large ground movements will occur during a similar earthquake along the Cascadia subduction zone, which runs from Northern California to British Columbia. GPS sensors will allow for more accurate determination of the increasing magnitude. Modeling shows that as the rupture continues and grows, expanding polygons indicate a much larger expected area of shaking, which will result in many more people being notified to take a protective action, such as drop, cover, and hold on. To learn more about the Shake Alert system and how to protect yourself in different situations, please go to shakealert.org.
You can go ahead and change the slide, Derek. Thank you. So as I said, this is available in Spanish and English. There's actually a longer version of this. This is 2 minutes long. We wanted to have a quick explainer. And on the next slide, there's a URL at the bottom. It's just on shakealert.org, and there's our media kit is available to do that. And I think the animation speaks for itself, but I think this is really important, is that we always use the talking point, and I think this is something that's very evident from the conversation today, is that the earthquake early warning isn't under a constant state of improvement. Things are just getting better all the time, and that's evident from the conversation today. And this is evidence that now we are able to take on the really big earthquakes, and we have a way to do that. So we're continuing to do better and better over time. And we know that these magnitude 7 earthquakes and larger are going to be the ones that are going to have a significant impact on people and on infrastructure. So it's important to know about this. And these sensors do complementary things. One, the seismometers detect how fast the ground is moving, and the GPS stations are how far the ground is moving. And they give very important information, allow us to do some really incredible things, understanding what's going on quickly. Next slide, please. So the other thing is that you may have not have heard, but earthquake early warning has come to Canada, and actually just currently in Western British Columbia, but will expand in the fall to Eastern Ontario and Southern Quebec. And what's really critical here is that this is, again, a cooperation with another country. Of course, they too have earthquake hazard. Of course, the Cascadia subduction zone extends up into British Columbia. There's sharing of data and other aspects, public safety information. We work together, so we're sharing the same messages. Not so much impact here in California in the sense of cross-border alerting, but we have had a lot of conversations with people in Washington, for example, is that there's a potential that people on the border could get an alert from the Shake Alert system, or they could get an alert from the Canadian system at the same time. So we're spending a lot of time talking about messaging. So we actually developed a fact sheet that's also in our media kit section. It's in French, Spanish, and English. And the first side talks just about earthquake early warning in general. And on the back side, it differentiates the Canadian system from the Shake Alert system. And so what's really great here is that, again, we're spreading this across North America and really developing a system that's consistent and with consistent messaging, which is critical. We all know in risk communications the importance of having the consistent messaging. Next slide, please. And that's it. I suppose there's questions later, but thank you for your attention. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Bob. For our final system operations presentation, I'd like to introduce Dr. Richard Allen with the Berkeley Seismology Lab, who will present on an expedition that was undertaken earlier this year to update a very unique station in our network.
Now Bob has shown a video. If I can't get this to work, it's going to be really embarrassing. Thanks for upping the ante, Bob. Okay, so my name's Richard Allen. I'm at UC Berkeley, and I was asked to come and show you a video that was put together by Berkeley to highlight some of the work done to really improve Shake Alert. It's a little embarrassing, frankly. The fact I'm just going to show you a video which I feature in, which is not how I usually give talks. But when I looked at this and I tried to think about how to frame the video, the truth is the guys that made the video, which wasn't me, did a really good job. So I don't think I can do better than that. So I'm going to largely just show you the video of this station build out. But I want to put it in context, first of all. We've heard a lot about the process of building out the stations. We're at about 90% completion. And so we're down, somebody asked, how long is it going to take us to finish the whole rollout? And the answer to that is that we're sort of down to the last stations, and that means that we're down to the really challenging stations. And so it takes a little bit longer to get these stations up and running, and this particular example is one of those. I'm going to show you, it's about a 5-minute video about this installation, or it's this upgrade for the Farallon Islands. The Farallon Islands, of course, are just offshore of the San Francisco Bay Area, so it's a real challenge to get to, and that's where the interesting aspect of this, this comes from. But the context here that you've already heard, so this is sort of just repeating that, is that we are gradually increasing the number of stations. Is that playing? I can't see. We are gradually increasing the number of stations. Oh, it is playing. There we go. That we are building out. We're at about 90% complete at this point. Okay, so that's what we're trying to do. There's a lot of stations. Over 1,000 stations is the goal in California. And we've talked about this a lot. I'm not sure anybody's shown a picture of the station. So I want to give a little context before I show you the Farallon Island station. This is a typical station. Okay, and so what you can see here is the sort of light green box on the left-hand side there. That's actually the seismometer. That's the sensor. The sensor is typically about a few feet below ground surface. So there's a very short little post hole there. We put the seismometer and an accelerometer at many stations in that box, and then we cover it up. And then the sort of the boxes and the solar panels and the antennas in the foreground here, that's kind of where then the telecommunications are. Obviously, that's the power source. That's the rest of the station. So this is very typical. This is what the vast majority of the seismic stations that we have actually look like. And so that's just for context. I'm going to show you this upgrade, or the video that was made about this upgrade to the Farallon Islands. This is a very challenging site, as you'll see. It was obviously therefore a more expensive site. So why is it important? And so that's why I wanted to include this map. It's very important because it's on the western side of the fault. Do you see my cursor? Yes, you do. Okay, so this is the San Andreas fault system. We're all familiar with that. It's a little more complicated than it's typically presented on the maps. There are multiple strands to it, as you can see here. But this is the San Andreas fault system that runs right down here. So you can immediately see that the vast majority of our seismic stations are on the eastern side of the fault. And that's a real challenge. When it comes to locating earthquakes, ideally you want to have stations that are all around the epicenter. So i.e. stations on both sides of the fault. And that's a real challenge to have stations on the western side of the fault. That's why we have a station right out here. That's why the Farallon Island station that we're going to talk about is so important, to have these stations on both sides of the fault. So that's the reason for all of the additional effort to install this particular station. Okay, so that's my introduction. I realize now I didn't share sound. Make this work. Hearing any sound? We're not. Have the backup. Let's try this one more time.
Every year, thousands of animals visit the Farallon Islands, about 30 miles off the coast of San Francisco. But only a few scientists visit this protected wildlife sanctuary. Most are biologists, but these researchers aren't here for the birds or the marine mammals.
So I'm Richard Allen. I'm the director of the UC Berkeley Seismology Lab.
Alan is here with a team of engineers to see this.
Okay, so this pile of rocks is the seismic station.
It's one of nearly 200 such stations across the state of California that can detect earthquakes. It's also a critical part of the Earthquake Early Warning System, which sends alerts to the MyShake app. Developed by Alan and his team, it could help save lives and billions of dollars in damages.
This instrument detects an earthquake. If it's one of the 4 instruments closest to the epicenter of the earthquake, it's used to locate the earthquake, estimate the magnitude of the earthquake, and then we send a warning out to people that people can get on their phone using the MyShake app. If you feel shaking, or if you get a warning about shaking, you just drop, cover, and hold on. In the Loma Prieta earthquake and in the Northridge earthquake, more than half of the injuries were because people either fell over or things fell on people. So if everybody drops, takes cover, and holds on to something, then we could halve the number of injuries in future earthquakes. So that's the first reason, is hazard reduction. But the other reason is research. We need to understand earthquake processes.
But to understand the earthquakes better, this station needs to be upgraded. And that means a lot of new equipment.
And the only way to bring that all out efficiently is actually to fly it in on a helicopter.
Thousands of pounds of gear are being delivered. Inside one crate is a brand new seismometer.
So what type of sensor is this?
This is a Streckhausen STS-5A. It will go.
The Farallon Islands provide seismologists like Alan with crucial data about one of California's most famous and most dangerous faults.
So the San Andreas Fault basically runs right down the western edge of California. We're all ready for a magnitude 7, a magnitude 8. We want to put out seismic instruments around the fault. And what's really important is having them on both sides of the fault. And so that's why a site like this on the west side of the fault, and it allows us to look east onto the fault, and it's fairly unique. We don't have many sites, unfortunately, on this side of the fault. This is such a critical site. It was one of the first instruments that was put here when we started to build, when Berkeley started to build the Berkeley Digital Seismic Network.
So there is the mouse. I saw it.
Right.
Thanks to funding from the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, new racks of electronics will replace a system that has become home to invasive mice.
And in this case, mouse-proof.
This is our opportunity to really turn this into a state-of-the-art site where we have much lower noise levels and we can really detect all earthquakes that are occurring in the region.
During a week that saw storms with 70-mile-per-hour winds and 2-story waves, the team set up the new sensors, ran cabling to the new rack, and hooked it all up to the antenna. Once the Farallon station is calibrated and brought online, it will join a comprehensive sensor network across California.
We've actually been rapidly expanding in order to support the early warning system, and we only have 4 stations left to build.
Stations like the one on the Farallon Islands might give people a few seconds to prepare for the shock waves of an earthquake, but they can't predict them.
Yeah, so we're not predicting earthquakes. We do not know how to predict earthquakes. What we do is we predict the shaking. What I mean by that is that when the earthquake, if we have a fault plane like this, the earthquakes typically occur at 8 kilometers depth in California. So that an earthquake nucleates on the fault, the energy radiates out, and it's detected by instruments close by. And it's once these instruments have detected the earthquake, we can then predict the shaking that will occur further away from the site. So we detect it with the closest seismic stations, and then we predict the shaking that's coming further away. And so that means you typically get a few seconds, maybe a few tens of seconds of warning.
Installing and maintaining this system isn't cheap. It costs $45 million a year. But that's money well spent, says Alan.
I think it's a hugely valuable system. In the Northridge earthquake, it's estimated that there was $2 to $3 billion of losses just due to the injuries. So if we can halve that number, then the entire system has paid for itself in just one earthquake. So I think it's really valuable. I think it's also valuable beyond just the early warning, in the sense that people are very interested in early warning. It makes people think about earthquakes, so we're more likely to have a preparedness kit. We're more likely to think about our homes and our offices and how safe they are to live and work in. And so I think it actually goes a long way to reducing the overall impact of earthquakes, not just because of the warnings, but because more people are thinking about the earthquake problem and looking to reduce the hazard.
So that was kind of the quick overview of this installation. Oh, sound off again. It was sort of, we sort of saw there was an opportunity here, obviously, to talk about this earthquake early warning system and emphasize the technology that's going into this. It was a little embarrassing. Those of us who were out there to talk about it were just there for the one day, and then the field team was there for a week, and they were in the worst storm that the island has seen. So we were pretty fortunate when we were actually there. Now, in that video that was made in January, that's when we did the upgrade in January, and you heard me say there were only 4 left to build, and as you heard Julian say, the Berkeley network itself actually only has 1 left to build at this point. So we're really getting very close to the end point in terms of building out the seismic stations. So that's it. That's the overview of the upgrade of the Farallon station. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Before we turn to the board for comment, I'd like to acknowledge Google's recent announcement regarding the expansion of the Android earthquake alert system to the United States. Although this proprietary system has been available in other countries, Google had not yet made it available here in the United States. While we're excited that more people across the country will now receive EEW alerts, it's important to note a few key points. Google's Android earthquake alerts within California will still rely on the infrastructure provided by the California Earthquake Early Warning System, powered by Shake Alert, to deliver earthquake early warning alerts in California and the West Coast, including Oregon and Washington. Although we anticipate the capabilities of Android alerts to expand over time, currently it does not have the ability to deliver automated protective actions and has limited coverage in rural locations based on cell phone connectivity and lack of devices. We still encourage Californians to download the CalOES-funded MyShake app, as it is available both to Android and iPhone users. With that, we will turn to the Deputy Director Najura for any comments.
I want to thank Dr. Allen for that that presentation. And I do have a question for you. I don't know if you want to come back up to the podium. So
also, the public comment mic is hot too, just to save you some steps, but you're already here.
Oh, there. So you mentioned that this is one of a small number of sensors or stations that is to the west of the San Andreas Fault. It's also one of the very, very few that we have actually off our coast. And I don't know, but I don't think we have any submarine sensors. Does that station help us with any earthquakes that might be happening off our coast as well? And how does that work?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, as far as earthquakes are concerned, the ocean's sort of irrelevant, of course, right? Earthquakes can happen on faults that are below sea level as well. The map I showed you showed how the portions of the San Andreas Fault, of course, are actually offshore, north of San Francisco. There are other faults. The San Gregorio Fault, for example, is also offshore. It actually runs right through past Santa Cruz, through the bay.
Monterey Bay?
Monterey Bay, thank you, through Monterey Bay. It runs right through Monterey Bay as well. So there are faults that are offshore. When it comes to detecting the earthquakes, it's really just where are the sensors above the fault. And as I said in this video, what we really want to see is we want to see sensors on both sides of the fault. So offshore is very challenging. The Farallon Islands was more expensive, but at least we can put a station above sea level. You can actually put out OBS, or ocean bottom seismometers, as well on the seafloor. They are much more expensive to maintain. And of course, to have the data in real time, we also need a fiber that runs to bring the data onshore. And there have been various efforts to do that, but it's been a real challenge. However, since you asked the question, I will mention there's
there's a new technology, a relatively new technology that is really changing things, and that's called DAS, distributed acoustic sensing. And this is an amazing technology. Okay, so this, as a seismologist, as you can see, I get excited. We always have this challenge of having enough sensors out in order to detect earthquakes. What DAS does is it takes a regular telecommunications fiber, and you put a computer, you put a laser at the end of it, you shoot the laser down this fiber, and it turns that fiber into an array of seismometers. And you can do this about along 200-kilometer length cable. And so Cal OES is actually funding research into how we can use these fibers to enhance earthquake early warning. And in fact, we have a fiber in the Monterey Bay right now where we're collecting data thanks to funding from Cal OES, and exploring how that could be integrated into the early warning system. So this has a huge potential. If we could have fibers that are offshore, for example, in Mendocino, where we have some of the larger earthquakes that are offshore, that could really be a game changer when it comes to improving the speed with which we can detect earthquakes, and actually get these alerts out through the early warning system. And I actually want to just acknowledge Megan Stanton again from PG&E. PG&E has been just such a fantastic partner in helping us try and identify fibers that we can make use of in various places around the state as we both develop the technology and think about where are the fibers, or what are the locations of the fibers we need to make the early warning system better. Just to be clear, this is very much research at this point, right? And so we still need to develop the technology. We need to understand how to integrate it into our current early warning system. But it's a technology that I think can have real potential to improve both the quality of the alerts and the speed of the alerts in the future.
Thank you. And with that, we'll open comments to the board.
Try one more. So I don't know if this is going to be directed to Dr. Allen or Julian, if he's still here. So can we go back to the false positives, the false alert conversation? I failed to raise this when you spoke about it earlier. So the 97% precision, I think, is what you have on the slide. So the first question is, when it is not precise, does it err? Is there a bias to the real thing being more intense or less intense when you have that lack of precision, or is it unbiased at all? It's just, it's equally, that makes sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think I'm going to try to answer.
Yeah, so that's quite, so in other words, when you do have a lack of accuracy, am I in for something worse, or am I in for something better in reality when I have the lack of precision on the device?
So I think there were 3 events for which we issued an alert. As I said, those, and a false alert. So which means we issue an alert in a certain area, although there was no earthquake in this specific area. The first thing to say is that this happened rather at the beginning of the implementation of the system. We didn't have any of those recently. So in fact, in these 3 cases, there was a real earthquake, but we did not manage to locate it precisely. So for 2 of them, it is because they were offshore, quite far, in fact, at the edge of the network. And as Richard explained very well, I mean, we have all the stations on one side of the network. We don't have like DAS or island where we could put stations. So it's very difficult for us to locate those earthquakes precisely. And we had quite a high uncertainty in the location. So that, and this is something we are trying to solve through, in fact, I gave a presentation about that, I think a year ago, through both a combination of new technology like DAS and also improving the algorithm by trying to implement some kind of machine learning in the decision process. The other event that was a false alert was in fact an event on the other side, close to the Nevada border. And at the time, we did not locate it precisely. And what we have implemented in the meantime is we are importing data from seismic station in Nevada, again, to try to have stations all over that regions. And this is why that situation has not repeated since then. So I think in those 3 cases, as I said, there was an earthquake, but not within, let's say, 100 kilometers from the location that we thought at the time the earthquake had occurred. I hope it answers the question.
Yeah, I think so. The earthquake was less intense than
it was more like located somewhere else.
Right.
But in terms of, so that's also another issue, is that if you, when we detect a seismic wave at the station, if we don't locate the earthquake precisely, let's say if we think, in fact, the earthquake is much further away, when we're going to detect such an amplitude at the station, we're going to think that's a huge earthquake, because to generate such an amplitude at such a distance must be a super high magnitude, whether in fact, because the earthquake is closer, it's a smaller magnitude earthquake. So when we make issues, when we cannot locate the earthquake precisely, we're going to also make an error on the magnitude estimation linked to the fact that we did not locate the earthquake. So in those cases, I think in most of the cases, the magnitude was overestimated because we did not estimate the location of the earthquake properly.
Thank you. And just in case it isn't obvious, the reason why this is very important for me, being a utility operator, is that if we do make a substantive change as a result of this warning system, we want to make sure it's real. Otherwise, we could do more harm than good.
Thank you. And David, to that point, one thing you should know is usually you can set the threshold. So if you want to ensure that this will be a sizable earthquake, you can kind of set the threshold to be higher than our normal 4.5 or 4.0 that it might set up. Okay, so as I said, we're moving a bit off of our scheduled agenda. We'll open up for public comment, as I believe we have one on the line.
Yeah, we do have a hand raised online from Marcos Alvarez. Marcos, I believe you can unmute yourself now.
Oh, thank you. I just wanted to mention when we were talking about island sites that in Southern California, we do have operating earthquake early warning stations on the Channel Islands. So we do have some sites, but they do need rebuilding. They're not at the level. They haven't rebuilt them as well as the one I just saw there on the Farallon Islands. So we do have presence out at sea, out in the islands.
Yes, thank you, Marcos. I will do a quick check with the board. Any additional questions or comments on this topic? Thank you to the System Ops presenters. And with that, we'll transition to education and outreach, where we will hear from Cal OES's Earthquake, Tsunami, and Volcano Program Manager, Yvette Leduc. We'll also get a chance to hear about some of our community outreach grants from our Education Outreach Lead Coordinator, John Goodell, followed by a presentation from Cal OES's Listos program.
Okay, thank you, Derek. So again, my name is Yvette Leduc. I'm the Earthquake, Tsunami, and Volcano Program Manager here at Cal OES. And here in California, we have a very robust education and outreach program. This is an annual program, so we do education outreach throughout the year, with our main event being in the fall annually with the Great Shakeout. In addition to John Goodell, who does a lot of our education and outreach for earthquake early warning, I wanted to also introduce Chris White. Chris is now our earthquake program specialist and will be heading a lot of our education and outreach for the earthquake programs. And Chris, thank you. So he just joined our program 2 months ago, so brand new. And so this will be his first fall campaign. Next slide. So before we start talking about what's happening in 2024, we wanted to do a quick recap of our 2023 Great California Shakeout event. So we did a 7-day tour with our Shakeout trailer, where we also had information booths and were able to engage with a lot of the public who came and visit us at each of our locations. We had over 500 people experience our Shake trailer, and thousands more attending and getting information from our booth, and we were able to engage with them. We had over 39 media outlets throughout the tour, and over 500 media mentions, and over 1,600 social media posts. And the great thing about these really big numbers is these numbers reflect actual people that we were able to reach and share our preparedness messaging and empower them with information and actions they can take to protect themselves. So this is really increasing our resiliency here in California. Next slide. So for 2024, so this year, 2024 Shakeout is October 17th. So each year, third Thursday in October. And at 10:17 a.m. will be the National Drop Cover Hold On event. You don't have to do your Shakeout event on that day and time, but we encourage everyone to do it together so everyone can experience doing the Drop Cover Hold On. Or we also message our Lock Cover Hold On campaign. And that is for folks who are unable to drop to the ground. We have the Lock Cover Hold On, which those who use assisted devices. We also encourage everyone to download the MyShake app. It's the best tool out there to remind people again to do their drop cover hold on when they receive that earthquake alert that they are going to experience shaking at their location. And then also, again, as we did last year, we'll have a booth set up with a lot of earthquake messaging and preparedness information. Cal OES is going to lead by example, as we have in the past. Again, this year, we are going to have a large event, not only here at our headquarters, but also in our regional offices. In addition to that, our director will also be sending out messages to all of our partners and to all of our state agencies, encouraging everyone to participate in Shakeout. So we really want this to be a collaborative event with all of our leaders here throughout the state of California. So here at headquarters, our warning center will support our activities. We have a speaker system over here in this building, where they'll announce it's 10:17 Shakeout, please practice drop cover, hold on. And then we'll have information so staff can pick up informational materials throughout all of our buildings here on the campus. And again, encouraging everyone here to practice that and so that they can then spread that out to their neighbors, families, and friends. And then we'll also be doing social media on that day. And again, engaging others to participate along with us. Next slide. So leading up to our Shakeout event, which will be on October 17th, we are going to do a road tour again this year. So some of our key locations, one is going to include Berkeley on Shakeout Day on the 17th. It's going to be co-hosted, the University, UC Berkeley, and also the City of Berkeley. And then that event will be open to the public. They're going to have a lot of booths set up, a lot of events going on for the public to really get people engaged and hopefully get a lot of folks out to participate. And we will also have our earthquake simulator there. We will also be supporting an event in the Los Angeles area in partnership with Southern California Edison. So they are doing an exercise with their Edison employees. So we'll be there to support that. And then we'll also be able to do a media event tied to both of these. So not only will we reach the people that we are directly engaging with, but millions more throughout the media. Next slide. This is a look at the tour that we're planning for this year. So it will start Monday, October 14th in the San Diego area, followed by, again, event in Los Angeles area on Tuesday the 15th. So that's in addition to the Edison exercise that we're supporting on the 17th. So we'll have two events. So really hoping to broaden our reach and get more inclusive of people in Los Angeles, especially in the light of the fact that many of us in Los Angeles area just experienced 2 earthquakes very recently. And then Wednesday the 16th, we'll be here in the Sacramento area. And then again, the 17th on actual Shakeout Day, we have multiple events planned in partnership with some of our other groups that we work with. Next slide. Okay, I think that is it, unless there's any questions about Shakeout.
Thank you, Yvette, and we'll cover questions at the.
Oh, Lori, I think had.
Before we move on, it's not a question, but what I want to say is if you're going to be in any of those cities on the days that we're going to be there, we invite you to come and join us and help us to amplify this message of earthquake safety.
All right, thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you. And with that, we will now turn it over to John Goodell, Education Outreach Lead Coordinator, who will tell us about a community outreach grant with the United Way.
All right, well, good afternoon. Just wanted to share a few minutes with you about our partnership with United Way. So as part of our Earthquake Warning California campaign, the Education Outreach Program puts an emphasis on reaching vulnerable population in seismically active regions. For this particular grant, we worked with our community-based organizations in 2 targeted counties, Riverside and a combined effort of San Francisco and Santa Clara. The subrecipients chosen for these grants were United Way Bay Area and Inland SoCal United Way. Next slide. The goal of this grant was relatively straightforward. Increase public awareness of earthquake early warning, including the MyShake app. To do this, we set out to achieve a goal of at least 20,000 direct public engagements per county. So what exactly is a public engagement? Well, these are any types of interactions with community members where they are provided education and resources. Community members were also encouraged to download the MyShake app, and other outreach included phone calls to homes and workplaces, text campaigns, and also visiting businesses and town halls, as well as the usual community outreach events. Each of those grantees are on pace to surpass the goal of 20,000 public engagements. Next slide. So in closing, here are some of the unique ways that these grantees provided outreach to their communities. Bay Area worked with SF Card to share preparedness tips and information. Some of these collaborations included connecting with community members in their native language and demographics, outreach booths at community living and youth centers. They also connected directly with living centers for people with disabilities, emergency preparedness specialists who are disabled themselves. For Southern California, the United Way Inland SoCal had a more wide-ranging approach. They connected with a variety of fairs and expos, ranging from sports to medical to holiday events. As noted, both subrecipients are on track to surpass 20,000 public engagements and to expend their full award before December 31st. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Now I'd like to introduce Suva Tai with Cal OES's Listos program to discuss a unique opportunity with Earthquake Early Warning Program.
Thank you. I'm here to talk about a partnership between the Listos California program and the EEW program. Very similar to what John just presented in the United Way program. Next slide, please. So what is the Listos California program? Listos California is a grant program through Cal OES to provide community-based organizations with funding to add disaster preparedness to their normal day-to-day activities. For example, one of our grantees this year is the Tzu Chi Foundation. The Tzu Chi Foundation is establishing a campaign to increase awareness about hate crimes throughout the Asian community and how Asian communities can prepare and keep themselves safe. Our funding is to allow for them, while they're engaging this Asian community, to provide disaster preparedness information. These are trusted stakeholders, trusted neighbors and community leaders who are engaged in the community in their language, within their culture, providing disaster information. And we plan to do this with the EEW campaign. Listos California was established at Cal OES in 2021 after a pilot program in 2019. We are currently in the 4th year of the program, and each year we grant out $25 million to community-based organizations. We also grant funding to tribal nations as well as CERT programs. In the 3 years at Cal OES, we have reached 8 million community members in disaster preparedness through over 14,000 different engagement activities. These are activities such as tabling at a preparedness fair, a preparedness presentation at a church or a neighborhood library, or at schools, or even long training such as search training through 20 hours. We are leveraging a trusted network, a grassroots network through this funding, and we have had over, I think, 150 different organizations as part of this effort. We've also created a portal to allow for all of our grantees to go online and enter all the information and also note the different demographics and vulnerable populations they are reaching so that we can find out in each county who is being reached and when and through what type of activities. We provide program support to our grantees by providing them training on preparedness information, as well as connecting them with local emergency management and other partners. We're looking forward to building on this opportunity to collaborate with other Cal OES units, as well as other local organizations, to leverage our community-based organization stakeholder group and our network to provide information about disaster preparedness. Next slide, please. The great thing about this grant was that we really offered this opportunity to establish community-based organizations within the Lisa's California portfolio. These organizations have already provided or learned how to integrate into this disaster preparedness space, and also already have a system in which they are engaging the community members. 4 organizations were chosen for this grant, which includes California State Alliance of YMCAs, and their focus is going to be with people with disabilities and older adults. Central City Neighborhood Partners, which will focus on people with limited English proficiency. Nuestra Comunidad, which will focus on farm workers and Spanish-speaking communities. And Todec Legal Center Paris, which focuses on immigrants and refugees. These are the 12 counties that they'll be focusing on, and they're going to be reaching in the high seismic activity areas as noted by the EEW program. Currently to date, so this program started in June. We are now in the 4th month, actually just the 2nd week of the 4th month, and they've already completed over 321 activities engaging the public in all 12 counties. Next slide, please. The goal is to create a peer-to-peer approach for earthquake preparedness. People going out and talking to community members and sharing information about early earthquake warning, and also getting people to sign up for the MyShake app. Focusing on the high-risk areas and also in vulnerable populations who are historically underserved or underreached. The goal is to reach 30,000 community members, and we hope to exceed that goal. Our grantees, the grantees for this program will also report on a triannual basis, and we're leveraging the current Listos California support program within Cal OES. So our program team will support these grantees and help them with the report, and also allow them full use of our portal to enter the information. Next slide, please. The grant was written in a way so that there was a lot of synergy between Listos California, so that our grantees can focus on using the funds and their time to really extend the EE outreach and the MyShake app. They didn't have to create a new reporting system or hire new employees or train new staff. They were basically adding this extra information to their staff and their already to their current activities. We're hoping that this is the first step to show the value of the Listos California program and the value of the partnership, and hope to see other partnerships within Cal OES and local government and local organizations. I think that's it. Thank you. Oh, I also brought some examples of some of the campaign materials that were created for the Listos California program. We have materials available in 17 different languages, and we are currently looking to develop additional languages, and we have a variety of different materials. We have our disaster ready guide in English and Spanish on the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Suva. With that, we'll turn to the board to see if there are any comments, and we do have a discussion question. And this opportunity exists obviously outside of this board meeting, but if there are any opportunities to support events or partner or present at any of your conferences or anything, please do not hesitate to let us know, but I open that up, or if there's any other potential questions or comments. Okay, hearing none, we'll now turn to Brandon Howland, Education Outreach Coordinator, to discuss the financial overview of the EEW program.
afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone's doing all right. So I'm going to finish off today with talking about the finance and looking at our budget. So if we could go to the next slide for me. Thank you, Ken. So I'm going to, again, talk a little bit about the EEW budget update and talk about the spending plan. Before I get into the 2024-2025 spending plan, I'm going to talk about the business plan, so the earthquake early warning business plan. And so I want to let you know that the governor's office has approved the 2023-2024 business plan, and now it's visible on our website for the public to view. And we're currently working on our 2025 business plan that's going through the first initial rounds of review. Now to the fiscal year 2024-2025 spending plan. The earthquake early warning ongoing funding of $17.1 million from the general funds is approved. And we continue to focus our expenditures on system operations while continuing our success with research and development and promoting earthquake early warning through our education outreach efforts. We have dedicated funds that continue outreach in DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, communities through our grant with LISTOS, as you just saw. And we continue our efforts to advance EEW in our other sectors by supporting the airport feasibility study and other potential implementation projects. Our ongoing funding continues to allow us to progress earthquake early warning implementation and outreach throughout California to increase awareness of our system as a vital life-saving tool. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. With that, I'll turn to the Deputy Director to see if there are any questions on finance.
No questions. Thank you.
All right, and to the board, any questions? Okay, with that, I believe that brings us to now move towards public. At this point, we'll open discussion for any public comment. All comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. If you are joining us online, please raise your hands or provide or message in the Q&A section. All right, seeing none, we will turn to the board members to see if there are any closing comments for us today. All right, hearing none, I will turn it to Deputy Director Nazura for any closing comments.
Once again, thank you for coming today. I hope that the agenda that was put together was helpful to kind of frame the activities, the education, the system operations advancements that are going on. And I hope it was informative to you. And if there's something that you'd like us to do more of, or if you happen to have ideas about different projects that maybe we can start talking about, if you would notify Derek ahead of time or send me an email, then we can get that agendized and have that conversation with the whole board. We want this to be a valuable experience for you. Not just entertaining, but like we're doing an incredible life-saving job here. And we're the opportunities are endless where this can go. And like Bob said, they're working on the USGS side, they're working on getting more technical partners that can actually produce this signal and become vendors so that other organizations can contract with them and get the signal. And then we're working kind of on that whole education and outreach side and trying to get it implemented. So get those end users kind of up and running and interested in the system. Again, the objective is a ubiquitous earthquake early warning system here in the state of California. So with that, again, thank you. Safe travels to where you're going. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you, Deputy Director Nazura. With that, we can entertain a motion to adjourn. Would anyone like to motion? And do we have a second? All right, all board members, all those in favor? Motion passes. Thank you. We are adjourned.